Hey guys, it's Phil with Razorback Tactical. Today we're going to talk about the Kestrel 5700 Elite with the Applied Ballistics software. We're going to talk about all of the different Kestrels out there and the different models, such as the Applied Ballistics with Elite. We're going to talk about the non-elite version of the Sportsman's model. We're going to talk about the WES and the X models. We're going to talk about the Ruger and the Hornady Ford-Off a little bit. And then once we go through the different models and the different types of Kestrels out there, we're going to talk about firmware versions and how to make firmware updates over your Kestrel app and your phone. We're going to talk about how to link your Kestrel to the phone or the app, whether it be Kestrel or Applied Ballistics. We're going to get into the weather menu, the system settings menu, the ballistics menu, and the accuracy first sub-menu within ballistics. And then once we go through all of the menus, we're going to show you how to use this Kestrel in the form of a pre-fired checklist. So a lot of great stuff coming. It's going to be a pretty long video. If you got questions throughout this class, know that we like to teach things and make them very interactive. A little bit more difficult to do in a YouTube video. So if you got questions, drop them in the comments or shoot us an email. Either way, we'll get back to you. First thing I want to do is thank Kestrel for sending us out some Kestrels. They sent us 8 of these red training Kestrels for our courses. We were going out and spending a lot of money, and now we don't have to spend a load of money. Anytime you come to a course, if you want to use a Kestrel, you could use one for free of cost. So thank them, awesome people. Second, let me just say that the Kestrel, in my opinion, is arguably the best tool that we've received in long-range shooting in the past decade. Though it's a great tool, and if you put the right data in, it will give you the right data on the back end. I don't want you to leave this video becoming entirely dependent on the Kestrel. If you lose your Kestrel or you run over with your truck, the battery dies, something like that, you should still be able to hit your target with enough data. So utilize it, but take notes and be able to fire in the event that your Kestrel breaks or you forget about it somewhere. All right, so let's talk about the history and the evolution from the data book into the Kestrel. Before we had the Kestrel, we had the data book. And this is circa 2012. I was in the Scout Sniper School, and there was no such thing as a data or a Kestrel to my knowledge. If there was, it was probably just a weather meter. And the way it worked is every time we went to the range, from 100 to 1,000 yards, we would just simply write down all of our data, whether it be the range that we're at, the ambient environment, the stuff about the weapon, the optic, the ammunition, location, and then our elevation settings. So at 300, if I started at 1.3 and I ended at 1.3, and they were all impacting pretty much center and not high or low, then I know that was pretty good data. Well, as time went on, we shot more and more. We took more and more data, right? So here, it's important to understand that if data was coming from me and a spotter, a two-man team, then I would rely on my spotter to take down my data. So if he took down my data, then I would require him to write neat enough for me to read it and write in a way that I can actually understand it, because most of the time we wouldn't take our data book to the range because we only had one. And we already had a pack that weighed between 80 and 120 pounds on a given day. We'd have our drag for our data book in a Ziploc bag, but most of the time we just determined, hey, we'll leave this at the barracks and we'll take some laminated cards, such as this right here. So we'd laminate these cards and we'd go out and we'd laminate, or we'd go out and we'd shoot, we'd write on it with a marker, and we'd come back and we'd transcribe everything that was on our laminated cards to our actual data book. And when it came time for qual day, we would look ahead at the weather channel and we'd say, hey, well, tomorrow is supposed to be 90 degrees. We're going to shoot between 100 and 1,000. Let's look at our previous elevation settings from 100 to 1,000 based off of 85 to 95 degrees and see what we come up with. So we'd flip through our data book and we'd find the most recent time that we shot 90 degrees. So in this case, at 990 degrees, we shot 8.9 mils of elevation and shot 1 and 9 were both in the center. 10 was a little bit high. I don't have any remarks about what's wrong, but we've got good impacts in here for the most part. Now at 800, same thing. My last elevation setting was 7.2. I used that the entire time and they're all pretty much dead center. So for 800 specifically, I know this is good data, and tomorrow if I qual and it's around 87 to 90 degrees, I can use this data and will be good because that was what I used on the previous engagement, which is where dope come from, data on previous engagement. So it works, but again, the data book relies significantly on however you fill it out. If you fill it out poorly, you're not going to have good data. If you pull it out really good, you will have good data, but it all comes down to you and how you fill it out or how your partner fills it out. And then if you have a two-man team, again, that's interpersonal communication skills. If it's raining and you're trying to use a laminated card with a grease pen or a marker, that's another problem. Transcribing it to a book, all of these things take skills and time, right? So that's how dope came up, and that's how we used to do it. Well, now we don't really use dope. People use the term dope all the time, but in my argument, we don't really use dope anymore. We use something that I call the ABCs. And what do I mean by the ABCs? Well, no longer are we seeing people go to a competition or an engagement, whether it be military or training, whatever, and opening up a data book and looking at, well, what was my last engagement at this range? Or you get a brand new shooter, you teach them the fundamentals, you help them zero your chrono of their gun, and they've never shot at 800 before. What do you start with? Well, you could go with something like what the data book used to tell you. The standard for this gun might be this. The standard for that gun based off of this velocity and that ammo might be that. But realistically, people aren't doing that anymore. People are building a gun in a Kestrel, and once they build their gun and they update their environment, they're simply going down here, again, updating their environment, building a gun, loading in their bullet data, putting in a target range, and the Kestrel is giving them a elevation starting point. So I call this the ABCs, or the applied ballistics calculations, because we're not using data on previous engagements most of the time. We're using brand new ballistic come-ups from the Kestrel and applied ballistics. So I call them the ABCs and not dope. So really, what am I getting at? Well, the data book worked great. And even when I taught at sniper school, when we had Kestrels, I still made our scout snipers in training make a data book, keep track of it, and utilize the Kestrel. If you use one or the other, you become dependent on it. Again, the pros and cons of a data book. Pros are great data and you'll have it forever, just like I've had this for over a decade. Cons are it takes time to fill it out. You have weather issues if this is not writing a rain paper. You have interpersonal skills if your partner is writing it down for you. Or if I'm writing down the data myself, then every time I take a shot, am I breaking my position to write information down? So those are your pros and cons really for your data book, whereas the pros and cons for your Kestrel, hey, it costs a lot more money than a book. It's a lot of information to learn. But if you can get over the price and the information that you have to learn, then it's astronomically awesome. But we don't want to be completely reliant on it, and we'll talk about that more later. All right, so that's kind of the brief history going from the data book over to the Kestrel. Again, dope to ABCs. I think it makes a lot of sense in my mind. I think the dope is dead. I think the ABCs are alive, and I'll let you see for yourself. What I'll say is the Kestrel, in my opinion, is a great shooting tool, but for me, it's more than just a shooting tool. This thing is a book of knowledge. I've got a lot of applied ballistics books. I've got a lot of apps on my phone. I've got a lot of time researching things on the internet and forums, and I've just went to numerous shooting schools in general. But this is arguably the best book of knowledge that I've ever had. If I've got a question about this ballistic coefficient and that wind, I can refer to a Kestrel and get a pretty good answer. If I've got a question about how much does wind affect this type of bullet, I can get an answer. If I've got a question on how much does density altitude really affect a bullet of this weight, well, I can get an answer. And there's so many great things where all of the myths or things that used to be called a fact, I can go in and verify. So I love the Kestrel for, even if it's not a shooting tool, simply a learning tool for myself as a teacher and a practitioner of long-range precision shooting. So if you're anything like me, you're going to see that this is essentially the book of answers, and you can refer to it, and it's a continuous learning tool. So let's get into it, and yeah, it's going to be good. We've kind of talked about the history and evolution from data books to the Kestrel. I want to actually get into the Kestrel itself. So I'm just going to quickly talk about some buttonology and overview, as I call it. So starting off, you've got your up, right, down, left, and enter or center button. You've got your gear button, which is commonly used as a back button. Your capture button, which I'll talk about that here in a moment. And then you've got your backlight and your power button. All right, so additionally, you've got your battery locking cap here. On the front, you have your temperature, your thermometer sensor. You have on the back, you've got your humidity sensor here. You've got a pressure sensor here under serial number. So pressure, humidity, your battery holding cap, and then you've got your data transfer ports, if you will. This is your impeller protector, and if you pop that open, you'll see that you have an impeller. So a lot of cool things. Now, the things I just showed you are pretty important to remember, because if you got your humidity and your pressure sensor and your temperature sensor, it's important that you hold it correctly. And when you're trying to hold this to get an update, ensure your hands are near the bottom. We're utilizing this string right here. So if I was to show you from this end, when I'm holding this later on, if I'm doing an environment update, I want to be trying to hold it from the lanyard and not with my fingers over the humidity, pressure, or the temp sensor. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this screen now. And now that we've got a quick overview of buttonology, as I like to say, I'm going to go ahead and hit the power button. And when I turn the power button on, I want you to look at the screen, notice the battery life and the version. It's going to briefly pop up. 5700 Elite, version 2.15, and the battery is full. You see the Applied Ballistics pop up in the background. Now again, Brian Litz, the owner of Applied Ballistics, is extremely smart. He's a rocket scientist turned ballistician, bullet scientist, and you've really got all of his science inside of this thing. So if you haven't been able to tell, what you should see is a ballistic calculator along with a handheld weather station. That's really what we're working with right now. Okay, so now that we've got to turn it on, you'll see mine went straight to the ballistic screen. I call this the E and W screen for E and W. Now, E and W are not east and west. That's actually elevation and windage. Love to say it because I've had people mistake that before. What I want to do here, first things first, is I want to hit the back button, this little gear, and that's going to take us back to the main menu. And then here you'll see mode. You can scroll right or left to easy, weather, and ballistics mode. We're not going to talk too much about the easy mode. Just understand that anything I say has specific orders that you need to do it in most of the time. Like if we're trying to true or DSF or do gun numbers and stuff like that, there's specific orders you need to do. If you forget some of those things and don't have access to this video, the easy mode in the Kestrel essentially enforces you and makes you do certain steps in order. That way you don't try to take a long shot and put bad data in your Kestrel. And I tell students that all the time. This Kestrel will give you an accurate reading out to your bullet subsonic. And then from there, once you DSF it, it will take you as far as you take it. But the analogy of crap in, crap out is really, really important to remember here. This Kestrel is accurate. But if you give it one bit of false information, it's going to give you false information on the back end. So just keep that in mind. We're going to go over to, we're just going to put it on the ballistics menu. Right now, it really doesn't matter too much, but let's just scroll through the menu button. So first and foremost, we have Bluetooth. I have that on. Now, if I was in, a fight somewhere with a peer competitor, I would have this turned off, but I have it on right now to do an update. And I'm showing you how to do that here in just a second. Data port, right now it's turned off. On this Kestrel, I have an ITAR compliant model. I've got certain military things in this Kestrel, and I can't update this one over Bluetooth. I have to have a CD and a cable. Memory options, I really never talk about that much, but you got a few things in there. Graph scale is pretty cool. When you go in here, if you wanted to, you could have your Kestrel turned off literally all day long as the battery lasts, hanging from a tripod or something like that with a wind vane or whatever you want. And if you started to graph scale, you could literally track temperature changes throughout the day. And that works well for certain people that have jobs where they try to act like meteorologists or, METOC analysis folks. It doesn't really have a purpose for a lot of things that I do as a shooter. Though, if I wanted to shoot and track humidity and pressure changes throughout the day, that could be a great thing. But honestly, I've just never found myself using it or really a need to spend time on it. Going back, next we got our display here. This is great because we have our auto shut down. I usually leave mine at 15 minutes. You can change this by just hitting left and right, and that will give you your times. Your contrast, I usually leave mine set at the factory standard of 10, and then the backlight, you can change this between red and white, and then that will just show you a red backlit screen or a white backlit screen. I'm just going to leave it on white for now, and I'll hit that button again to turn it off. And again, that was this top right light button to turn it on and off. Go ahead and hit the back button, the top left, and I'll go down again to system. System is important because this tells us time and date. To be completely honest with you, I never update the time or the date in my Kestrel. Now, if I was using a graph scale, I would. But like I said, I don't really use the graph scale. Compass calibration. This is very vital. When we're doing compass calibration, there's, I don't want to be doing it in my house first and foremost, but if we're trying to use the capture button to get direction of fire or target direction, wind direction, all that stuff, it's imperative that the Kestrel has a compass calibration. Think about the Coriolis effect, or the fact that the bullet may be flying over top of the Earth while the Earth is rotating. And if the bullet is in flight for, say, 3 to 4 seconds, does that minute amount of Earth's rotation would cause your bullet to miss the target. So you'd want to update your compass calibration. We literally just hit the button and we do what the Kestrel tells us. We simply pick it up on a vertical axis and then typically keep it on a flat surface. It'll tell you what to do. You hit the start button and you rotate it slowly for 30 seconds. I'm not going to do it in here. If you mess up the first time, that's okay. Just try it again after that. Accuracy first, on and off. These usually come from the factory off, in my opinion. So I'm just going to leave it on. But if you have that turned off, I recommend turning it on. Measurements. Here we've got, like I said, time and date, all of these things. Some of these come from the factory turned off, typically like dew point and wet bulb. If you are, doing things more tactical and going out on patrol, and you want to know more for the mission, when do I need to get tarp out? When do I need to worry about the dew point and the wet bulb? When do I need to worry about certain things? I would use that. Heat index is another one that's usually turned off. That heat index might be good for physical training or long patrol, stuff like that if you need to know it. I usually like to just turn all these on. If you find yourself not using them, come back in here and turn them off. Units, set this up for whatever language you speak. So we're in America, so for this, I'm going to be using mile per hour, temperature Fahrenheit, pressure, inches, and you can change these simply by moving stuff around. I'm going to use it on inches mercury, altitude, feet, and that's really it. So I'm just setting that up for the way I typically see things. Now, if you want to check different things like meters compared to feet or yards compared to meters, that's easy. We can do that in the EW or the ballistic screen later on. I'll show you how to do that. Language, pretty self-explanatory. Battery is extremely important. So there's obviously multiple types of batteries out there. You've got your alkaline batteries, and then you've got your lithium batteries. The important thing to understand is these have different polarities. And when they have different polarities, they adjust or affect the compass calibration first and foremost, and they have different powers pushing out of the battery because of the way they're constructed and the things within them. So it's all fine and dandy, but you need to understand that when I'm doing my battery setup, I need to tell my Kestrel what type of battery is actually in my Kestrel. For an example, I think it's this one right here. I've got no battery in it right now. It's dead because the battery's taken out. So all I'm going to do is use my unlock battery compartment. I'm going to move this over. Sometimes it can be in a pain in the butt, and I'm just going to take the edge of a knife, the bottom portion. I'm going to push that over. Sometimes this one's a pain in the butt. All right, now it's unlocked. You can simply pop that off. Now, I'm going to put a alkaline battery in it. This is a brand new alkaline battery, and I'm going to put it in here. I just want to show you what happens when I turn this on. You see here how it says the battery is basically empty. Now it's saying it's halfway full. Go to menu, go down to system, go down to that. What you're going to see now is the Kestrel thinks that the battery is only 25% full. The battery is full. I just pulled it out of the case. But as you see here, it's saying the battery is 25% full. So if you're ever running a Kestrel and you're thinking, man, this thing survived on 10% for a year, it's probably because your Kestrel thinks it's running a lithium battery and it's got a different power output coming to it. So always good practice anytime you put a new battery in, just go into the settings, go into the menu for the system and update your battery. Because again, different polarity is just going to affect your compass cal. So again, this is an alkaline battery, so I'm going to switch it to alkaline, and now it's saying it's 100 or 99%, good to go. I'm going to set this one back off to the side after I go put my cat back on. You want to notice when I close this, it's going to automatically switch from unlock back to lock, and I don't have to worry about that anymore. All right, so back to this one. All right, this one's got a lithium battery in it. Yep, it's got a lithium battery. It's 100%. Cool, moving on. Humidity calibration. Honestly, you could calibrate your humidity. I've never done it before. I've never seen a need to. Every Kestrel humidity sensor I've always seen has been pretty bang on, and I've never seen a need to adjust it, and it really doesn't affect the bullet that much unless it's extremely hot. Like, think of subtropical islands hot with a lot of humidity. Other than that, it really doesn't matter. Factory restore, if you feel like you're super messed up with your Kestrel, you can hit this button and do that, but that's really it for your system menu. About is really good because about tells us the version that we're in. Right now we're in version 2.15, and I'm going to show you how to update that and check for updates here in just a second. And we've got a serial number in there which matches the serial number on the back, so all good. But if your sticker comes off and you need to know the serial number, you can find that in about. The other good thing about the about menu is it's got everyone's favorite, the game of Snake. So I can play Snake on my Kestrel. I gotta get that one right there. Boom. You get the purpose. I'm not gonna play this forever, but if you get bored, you got a Snake in your Kestrel. You just got to go to the menu and then go to about, and then there you go. All right, so we talked about the version a few times. Let's go up here to mode again, and Bluetooth. Make sure that's on. And now I want to talk about how to adjust your version or update it to check, see if it needs any updates. So I've got my phone here, and you can see I've got the Kestrel link installed. I'm just going to hit the Kestrel link. And then from here, all I'm going to do is hit connect the device. Should be connecting to this same serial number. And then it's going to tell me right off the bat if there is new firmware available. This one's saying there is, and it's asking me, do I want to update, yes or no? It tells us the changes. It adds vapor pressure deficit, and it fixes a temp rounding issue in a 5700 model. So that's great. I want to take the update. I'm just going to hit the update button, and it's installing the update. Now, I've seen this take 5 minutes. I've seen this take 10 minutes. A good thing to note is if you are doing a Kestrel update, it's a good practice to back up the things in your Kestrel into your phone application of your Applied Ballistics or your Kestrel menu. it tells you they can be deleted. Even the system settings can be restored back to factory settings. Honestly, I've never had that issue. Every time I do an update, I've never really seen anything get deleted. But it can happen. So I'm going to just let these set off to the side for a minute, and I'm going to let these update, and we'll see how long this takes. So I'll set this up to the side, and I'm just going to use a different Kestrel for this. Now that we've kind of talked about the overview of the system settings, what I want to do briefly is just show you the box that it comes in. Inside of the box, you get a few different things, but you typically get an owner's manual, a little protective case, and most importantly, a lanyard. We haven't talked about the lanyard much, but the lanyard is usually very, very simple. If you don't have a lanyard, get yourself a piece of 550 cord, doesn't matter what color, and in the bottom you'll see this little, whatever you want to call it, but you can attach your lanyard there. So it comes with a little applied ballistic sticker. I replaced it with a Razorback Tactical, obviously, but let's get back into it. We've talked about the system settings, the menu, and Bluetooth. That one over there is at 4%, so it's still taking a bit. After that, I turn my Bluetooth off typically. The reason why I turn my Bluetooth off is because, one, it saves power. Two, if I'm fighting in real life, as my job depends on, there are sensors that can detect Bluetooth frequencies. Now that we're talking about Bluetooth, I think it makes sense to go ahead and talk about different Kestrels out there that's available and what you're paying for. So really they have three different models. They have the Sportsman, or the non-elite version. They have the Elite, which is what we're looking at here. You see where it says Applied Ballistics. That means it's the Elite version. And then you have the Elite X. The X, you'll know it's an X because it'll have an X on the screen. And then the newest one that just popped out is the WEZ, or the Weapons Engagement Zones. The Sportsman model, the lowest end one, also has different categories. Now you have the Ruger version in Sportsman, then you have a Hornady 4DOF. Hornady 4DOF just stands for 4 degrees of freedom, and it is great for most shooters that shoot a lot of Hornady ammo. It doesn't have some of the same features that the Elite version has, and I'll talk about that here in just a second. But the biggest things about the Sportsman models, like the Ruger or just the standard Kestrel Sportsman, is it only allows you to save 3 gun profiles. Only 3. If you've only got 3 guns, that's fine. I have one gun, a LaRue Predator, that's a multi-caliber, and I have multiple barrels. So I've got 2 different length 260 barrels for it. I've got 3 different lengths, so 20, an 18, and a 16-inch 308 barrel. And just those 3 different barrels for 308 could be 3 guns. Plus the 260, that's 5 guns. Oh, by the way, I want to add a 6.5 barrel. That's another gun. So I quickly exceed the amount of guns that would be required. So that's the first reason for me why I don't want a Sportsman. I want an Elite, because the Elite gives you 30 guns. 30 guns. That's the biggest factor. The X and the WEZ is also going to give you 30. Additionally, the X has adjustable Bluetooth power, which is great for maybe special forces or some sort of operators that are going down range and they need to link the Kestrel to a laser rangefinder solution that's Bluetooth powered, or they need to link it to an external application. Anytime they require Bluetooth, but they don't want the power to be high, which is a standard on the Elite or the Sportsman, the X would be a good call. The X also has a much faster processor. So if you're doing extreme long range shooting or ELR, and you don't want to scroll forever to get to, say, 3,000 meters, the X is going to process faster and get you there quicker. In my experience, this is the Elite model, and you can see when I start at my 600 yards right now, if I just start holding it right, you can see how fast it starts going the longer I hold it down. So it's taking a second, but before you know it, we're about to be at $3,000, and I went over it. So in my opinion, it's not terribly slow, and it's definitely not slow enough that it warrants me to spend extra money for a faster processor. I also don't feel like I need a multiple mode or multiple power output Bluetooth setting. It's a military requirement that certain military folks require. I don't. and most of you probably don't either. The biggest thing that the Elite model offers and the X model offers that the Sportsman doesn't is more in-depth showcases of ballistics. What I mean by that is inside of the Elite in the ballistics menu, you can go down here to ballistics and literally see a bunch of stuff, which I'm going to walk through later. A lot of these things are not going to be available in the Sportsman's model. You also have a target card inside of the Elite model. The target card is essentially a range card that allows you to put multiple targets in and keep that stored in your Kestrel. And you could do, I want to say it's either 10 or 30 different target cards. For example, if I went to my home range and I wanted to build a range card for that or a target card, I could. But if I wanted to, I could go to target card and adjust this. On this one that's updating over here, I've got a target card built for range 1. So if I get the range 1 in the morning and I don't want to range everything, I could have, knowing that the targets are going to stand in one place, I could scroll over to my range 1 target card and I would know that the targets on the left hill are these ranges, and a target on the right hill are 600 and then 680 and then 720 and so forth. So I think that's really cool. Again, that's not offered in a Sportsman's model. Really what it comes down to is if you're an enthusiast for long range shooting, you get more data, more science, more knowledge. And like I said, this thing is a book that has taught me a lot of stuff. I prefer to have all those things in my Kestrel. So take it for what it's worth, but I really think that you get what you pay for when it comes to the Kestrel. Now, last thing we're going to talk about is the WES version. The WES, again, is a weapons engagement zone. I've not got my hands on that Kestrel. Personally, I don't think I will need that Kestrel because I have the Applied Ballistics app. If you have the Applied Ballistics app, if you have a standard model, you don't have access to the WES. But if you pay for the Pro subscription, I believe it's $30 or $40 a month. If you want that weapons engagement zone feature, you could get that on your app. You could get it in the Kestrel and it unlocks it in the app, which would probably be cheaper in the long run. But I don't think I need the WES feature every time I'm on a range. That's just my opinion. If you want to see more on the WES, I highly recommend you get onto Applied Ballistics YouTube page and check out that. Additionally, while we're talking about YouTube pages and knowledge, though I'm teaching this class right now, understand that Kestrel actually teaches free online virtual classes as well. So check out Kestrel, especially their Instagram. They usually showcase the dates and they do live Zoom meetings on the Kestrel. Okay. And then again, if you come to a course, Kestrel rentals are free. And then just for everyone's update, we are at 24%. So taking a while. All right, hey guys, we're going to head and fast forward to the firmware version upload being complete. So now when I turn this on, you're going to see version 2.17. And just for everyone's awareness, that took 41 minutes exactly to be completed from my Kestrel app or via the phone over to my Kestrel. Now that I have that firmware version uploaded, I also want to tell you that in the break that I took to get that firmware uploaded, once it was complete, I went ahead and calibrated my compass. And just for everyone's awareness, a quick reminder, I went into the systems or the menu, went down to system, and then I went to compass cal. It gives you directions, but I'm essentially going to hold it by the impeller and twist it slowly like this for 30 seconds. Nothing crazy. It will tell you if you did it correctly or not. And worst case scenario, you do it again. Full transparency, I did this in my office. I'm not expecting it to be accurate at all. But we went ahead and did it. Now, from the compass cal, I'm going to go back up in my system and I'll stop out there. So I'm going to hit back and now I'm in the system menu. I'm going to go back up to the top, and remember my Bluetooth, I told you that I like to keep it turned off if I'm no longer doing an update or linking it with paired devices. Now that we've talked about the compass cal and the version firmware update, now we've pretty much talked about every single thing in the systems menu. So the next thing I'm going to do is go over to the weather mode and talk about that next.